He praises the Beijing Winter Olympics as epoch-making. He also says that it was love at first sight with Bing Dun Dun. He salutes China's national fitness program, looking forward to the Asian Games in Hangzhou. He says youth represents hope. He wants to lead the IOC to keep pace with the times. In this edition of Leaders Talk, we meet Thomas Bach, President of the International Olympic Committee.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Zhou Yun. We're now at the National Speed Skating Stadium, also known as the Ice Ribbon, and this is where athletes from around the world competed during the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. And our guest today is Mr. Thomas Bach, President of the International Olympic Committee. So how should the modern Olympic Games with more than 100 years of history keep up with times? And why did President Bach say that he fell in love with the mascot Bing Dun Dun at first sight? And what kind of experiences has made him been always against the idea of sports politicization? Today we're going to talk to our guest, Mr. Thomas Bach, President of IOC. President Bach, it was a great pleasure to have you on the program.
Great pleasure being here.
Well, this is your first visit to China after the Beijing Winter Olympics. Well, talking about that game, there are many special memories left, including the exceptional performances of the sporting events, the commitment of China's fulfillment in engaging 300 million people in winter sports, and also the star mascot, Bing Dun Dun, right? That was mine, by the way. And also many traditional Chinese food, for instance, the pocket pie, 韭菜盒子 went viral among athletes. Well, President Bach, to start with, we're really curious to know what was the most impressive thing or moments to you about the Beijing Winter Olympics?
I think it was the moment of the opening because we were all longing for these Olympic Winter Games under the very difficult circumstances. And then when it finally starts, you know, this is a kind of first relief. You're not fully relieved, but it's a kind of first relief. And when we saw the opening ceremony unfolding in such a spectacular and meaningful way at the same time, this was something I will never forget.
And you said the Beijing Winter Olympics is going to change the landscape of winter sports globally. What kind of changes have you witnessed?
There is an international winter sport before these Olympic Winter Games, Beijing 2022, and there is a much bigger and important one right after. China having engaged more than 300 million people in winter sports. This is for the international winter sports community a milestone. Is not enough to say it's a landmark, historic event for winter sport internationally. And therefore, these Olympic Games will always be in the memory, not only in the minds of the winter sports fans, but in the minds of the entire worldwide Olympic community.
Well, that is really good to know. And those star mascot, Bing Dun Dun, they were insanely popular during the Beijing Winter Olympics to a point that people even joke buying a Bing Dun Dun was as hard as winning an Olympic medal. That's kidding, of course. But you had one at that time. Did you add it to your collection?
Yes, I had one, and I must say I was falling in love with it from the very beginning. Their delegation from Beijing came to Lausanne for approval. They did not want to show photographs before because they said it's so secret and
yes,
don't want to take a risk. And so they came with the delegation, and then my people, were starting to prepare me, and they were not sure, whether I would like it or not. So have a look, and so they were very, very careful.
Right.
And
what was your reaction like when you first saw that?
Then I came to the room, I saw it, and I was in love with it.
That's what we call falling in love at first sight, right?
Yeah, exactly, from the very first moment. And since then I've been following, then of course, closely the success of this. And I had another great moment last night when I got presented a big dun-dun, the rabbit, in the year of the rabbit.
Oh, wow.
So I have now two of this, and I'm cherishing both.
President Bach, you've met with Chinese President Xi Jinping many times in different occasions. So what is your impression of President Xi, and is there any memorable moment to share with us?
Actually, I got to know President Xi for the first time in 2008, during the Beijing Olympics, when he was responsible there already for the delivery. And since then we have met many times. We had the very successful Youth Olympic Games in Nanjing in 2014. We had many discussions then about the preparations of the 3 consecutive Olympic Games happening in Asia, with all the issues which were related to each of them. And I always met a man who was living, this love of sport and this acknowledgement of the values of sport, and this commitment to the unifying mission of sport, and in this way driving greatly forward the development in sport, not only in China, but on a global scale.
One of the different voices that emerges among IOC stakeholders recently is about the committee's recommendation to allow Belarusian and Russian athletes to compete as individual neutral. Well, IOC has always been against the idea of politicizing sports. So what role do you think IOC could play in upholding this ideal going forward?
There again, it's about our values, and our mission is to unify the world. That means to bring everybody together in a peaceful competition. This we can only achieve if we are politically neutral. It does not mean that we ignore politics.
Right, not apolitical to it.
No, the world is run by politics and not by a sports organization. And this we are acknowledging, this we are respecting, and this we have to take into consideration. But we cannot take political sides in a political dispute. We have a very clear position that you cannot sanction or punish athletes for any political acts of their government. We want to make our very humble and modest contribution to hopefully achieving peace. I think we should talk less about wars and conflicts and confrontation. That we should talk more about the solutions for all these challenges and problems, and the human solution. And we have a humanitarian mission. The human solution is peace.
And you have also previously said that the Olympics should be a haven from politics.
I was for the first time really confronted with this contradiction between the role of sport and politics, and this was at the Olympic Games in Montreal, 1976. There, I was as an athlete there, and one morning I was looking out of the window of our room in the Olympic Village, and saw on the main square a big number of apparently African athletes standing there, with luggage, all with hanging heads, and some of them you could see, that they were crying and holding each other and trying to gain some strength. And And then I was told, they have to leave the Olympic Village because their governments are calling them back because of a political boycott of the games. And you know, this was an extremely sad moment. 4 years after, with the boycott and the discussion in my country about the boycott, for me was already based on this experience from '76, and this is why I was fighting with all the small force I could offer there as the athletes representative, and then we lost this fight. Actually, it's the reason why I'm sitting here today, because I do not want to future generations of athletes happening what happened to us with the boycott. And this is how it started in the sports management side for me. And therefore, I definitely think, and there we all agree, it's even enshrined in the Olympic Charter, that we have to bring all the national Olympic committees, all the athletes from all national Olympic committees together. And this is why we're also working hard to have all the 206 NOCs then hopefully next year in Paris.
Before becoming IOC president, Thomas Bach competed in the foil discipline of fencing and won a gold medal at the 1976 Montreal Olympic Games. In 2013, Bach was elected as the 9th president of the International Olympic Committee. As a leader who manages a huge international organization, he describes himself as an orchestra conductor, showing how important it is to strike the right balance and foster harmony in his career. During his 10-year term in office as the president of the IOC, Bach promoted the Olympic spirit and the modernization of the organization. He hopes that competition becomes an important driving force for peace, health, equality, and unity.
As the president of IOC, how can you make sure that the modern Olympic Games, after over 100 years of development, is still relevant and keep pace with the rapidly changing landscape that we have today? And in what way do you think the pandemic has changed the Olympics?
It is this question of staying relevant in our, as you were saying, rapidly changing times and societies is a question you have to answer every day. And the challenge in such an international organization is that you have to try to anticipate. Because if we feel today that a certain sport is all of a sudden becoming very important, then a decision you are taking is becoming effective in 7 years or 8 years. So you have to anticipate or try to anticipate what will be modern in 6-7 years from now. And is, in this example, this sport, is this just something for the moment which will disappear in 2 years? Or is it something which will really gain attraction? And so it is with many. We try to answer this by our reform program of Olympic Agenda 2020. And they're in two different ways. First of all, to make our decision-taking system more flexible so that we can react on more short term. And secondly, by opening up the games with regard to the Olympic program, modern and young sports. We have started to look into e-sports. There are virtual sports, to say it more precisely. And in such a way trying to keep up with a rapidly changing world and with all the great potential we have with digitalization overall. And this is what makes it so fascinating.
And challenging at the same time.
Yeah, but you know, every challenge is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
How we also addressed the pandemic.
Yes.
To say, where is the opportunity? And the opportunity was to show how important sport is for physical and mental health. The people could experience it firsthand. Before, everybody said, yeah, sport is good for health, but nobody did really follow up on it. With the pandemic, it became tangible for everybody, and we could then finally show, not the least with the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022, that even after these, under these very difficult circumstances, that you can organize a successful Olympic Games, and you can give a signal of hope and confidence to all humankind that life continues, that this pandemic is not the end of everything, that life is continuing, and there is still joy in life, and there is joy in the effort of organizing these games.
Paris is going to stage the 2024 Olympic Games, and this is going to be the very first game as the world emerges from the pandemic. So what are your expectations?
As you have been mentioning, there will be the first Olympic Games after the pandemic, and therefore there are great expectations worldwide in these games. The people are longing to coming together again, and we are longing for the moment when we can have, you know, the entire world not only on the field of play, but also off the field of play together, where the fans, the families and friends can come and can share this Olympic spirit.
So China Media Group, a long-standing media partner of IOC, is going to send a team of over 2,000 people to the Paris Olympics, and also over 1,400 people to the Hangzhou Asian Games to do the coverages as well as reporting. So how do you see this cooperation between the two sides, and do you have any messages to my colleagues?
We're excited about this cooperation because we could see firsthand and in an extraordinary way to what CMG and you and your colleagues are able to do during the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022. We saw on the one hand extremely high skills in technology at CMG, where we could realize together, you know, first programs in 8K quality and many other innovations, and where on the other hand the Chinese audience greatly appreciated, you know, this presentation, and this was the reason why we want to establish a new Olympic record together with CMG by having entrusted to you and your colleagues the production of 4 very important Olympic sports during Paris 2024. So then the whole world can appreciate the efficiency and the commitment and the highly professional skills of your colleagues, because these 4 sports, of course, like the entire Olympic Games, will be broadcast to billions of people around the entire world, around the globe. So we are really looking forward to this moment and realizing this great goal together.
这种奥运场馆的开放可以让咱们大家都能参与到滑冰这项运动中来，然后更好地体验这个奥运体育运动的魅力。
它是一个非常高标准、非常专业的一个场地。看冬奥会比赛给我那种竞技的精神，让我也就热爱起来了。对于我个人来说，我以后可能会想做滑冰教练。
在这个奥运会的运动员待过的地方体验一下这个，感觉还挺神奇的。再加上那个屏幕上也播放这个比赛嘛，就觉得还挺有代入感的，感觉自己参与进来了。
One of the major challenges faced by host cities of the Olympic Games is how to make full use of the venues after the Games. And as the very first city that has hosted both editions of the Games, Beijing has not only reused many of the sporting venues for the Winter Games, and also has turned many venues into sports stadiums and city landmarks that are open to the public. So how do you see the efforts made by China in promoting and leveraging the legacies of the Olympic Games?
No, there another time China has set a benchmark for future organizers with regard to the legacy of these Olympic Games, and this is going far beyond the use of the facilities. We see now already the facilities being open to the public. We have seen that during the most recent winter season, all the Olympic venues were busy with Chinese winter sport tourists. We see that sports on ice are not only practiced in the north of China anymore, but even in the south.
Exactly, in the southern part of the country.
Yeah.
Which is hot, right?
And the kids love winter sports and practice winter sports. And then you have, the economic legacy by they're greatly enhancing the sports industry in the wider sense with the engagement of these 300 million Chinese people in winter sports. And there, tens of thousands of jobs opportunities have been created. We see the cultural legacy by so many pieces of art which have been created around, and so on. So it's a real benchmark, and for all of this, I'm sure that you will also see many more international winter sports events in China and in these facilities in the years to come. There, the international winter sports federations, they're very keen to make use of this great legacy.
There's going to be another highly anticipated event here in China. It's the Hangzhou Asian Game, which is going to be held in summer this year under the slogan of Heart to Heart at Future. What do you make of the slogan? What kind of influence do you think this game will bring to the sports development, not only here in China, but also around Asia?
This motto is perfectly reflecting the Olympic motto, because it means, in the interpretation, together we go to the future. And this is what we are about in the Olympic movement. To go together, with our amended Olympic motto, and to go to the future with a young generation. So I think it's really a very inspiring motto. And the Asian Games, have a very special place in the Olympic movement. There are by far the biggest continental games. I think we have shown it in the IOC. The last 3 Olympic Games all took place in Asia. And this is how we see Asia. For us, Asia is a continent of and for the future. We see the dynamic developments. we're seeing the young Asian population embracing sport. So I'm looking forward to Hangzhou, and I'll be there.
China now upholds people's health and fitness as a national strategy. So President Bach, as a former Olympic champion, the chief of IOC, and also someone who always looked very fit and energetic, what would be your suggestions to the Chinese people about improving their health and fitness?
Practice sport, do sport, and you will see it's not only good for yourself, it's giving you a lot of joy. And it helps you greatly to a better life. It helps you to a better education. It makes you more positive in your mind, and therefore sport is great for each and everybody. And there again, we can see how China is leading the way, coming. I remember when President Xi once explained this to me, how in China sport was always considered to be a distraction from education. And that even parents and teachers would say, no, you don't have time for sport, it's what we have to learn. And that this was the moment when he said, this is not possible anymore. In the contrary, we have to do more for sport and physical activity because it helps learning and it helps education, and in this way, leading the Chinese people to more physical activity and to more sports.
What's your take on that move?
I think it's a great move, and I was already appreciating it very much at the time. This was in 2014 when he told me this story. I still remember this moment. And now, you're already at another level. But you see that by now the people are embracing these positive effects of sports by themselves. So they do not need to be told so much anymore. They have already the personal experience. And this is great to see.
Now in Beijing, you saw people jogging and doing exercise on the streets and also at the gyms. Do you still do sports now, President Bach? And what sports do you practice?
I try to do to run a little bit. And since I'm living in Switzerland, then I have somehow fall in love with mountain hiking and run around in the mountains there, what I really appreciate.
President Bach, it was a great pleasure and honor talking to you, and greatly appreciate for sharing with us all those memorable moments and very insightful views. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
From One World, One Dream in 2008 to Together for a Shared Future in 2022, the bird's nest behind me has witnessed the splendid blooming of Olympic dreams here in China. During the interview, President Bach has emphasized the role of Olympic Games in maintaining world peace and propelling human development. And China, as an active participant, will spare no efforts in spreading the Olympic spirit. With that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Zhou Yun in Beijing. Many thanks for watching, and see you next time.